One night in Chicago, surgeon Dr. Richard Kimball returns home with his wife after attending a hospital fundraising party. During the drive, the hospital suddenly calls him about an emergency case. The on-duty doctor cannot be reached, and the patient needs immediate surgery. Richard drops his wife at the house and quickly heads back to the hospital. Like any dedicated doctor, he sets aside everything else and focuses on the patient. The surgery goes well, and once it is finished, he drives home late into the night. But the moment he enters the house, something feels wrong. His wife lies on the floor beside the phone, badly injured. Before he can reach her, an intruder attacks him. In the chaos, Richard notices a strange detail. The attacker has only one arm. Despite Richard's effort to stop him, the man breaks free and flees into the night. Richard rushes back to his wife and desperately tries to save her. But the injuries are too severe. In his arms, she slowly slips away, leaving him in shock and grief. Not long after, the police arrive. Detectives question Richard about what happened. They ask about enemies, work conflicts, and whether anyone expected to visit the house that night. Richard explains that he saw a one-armed man who attacked them and then fled. But the detectives remain skeptical. The house shows no sign of forced entry, and the security system appears untouched. They begin to focus on Richard himself. They point out that he stands to gain from his wife's life insurance policy. As the questioning continues, Richard's calm expression only makes them more suspicious. Eventually, the pressure becomes too much. He shouts back in frustration, insisting he did not kill his wife. Yet his anger only convinces them further that something is wrong. The case quickly moves to court. Prosecutors present several pieces of evidence against him. Skin found under his wife's fingernails, the emergency call she made before dying, and the large insurance policy all point directly to him. In the recorded call to 911, she reports an attack, but in the confusion, Richard's name is also heard.
He's trying to kill me.
Ma'am, is your attacker still in the house?
Richard? He's trying to kill me?
Without proof of the mysterious intruder, the jury believes the evidence. Richard Kimball is convicted of murdering his own wife and sentenced to death. Soon after, he's transported to prison with several other inmates inside a guarded bus. During the trip, the prisoners quietly signal to each other. One of them suddenly pretends to suffer a medical emergency. When the guard opens the door to check on him, the situation explodes. The prisoners attack. Gunfire breaks out inside the moving vehicle. The driver is hit, and the bus loses control, sliding off the road before crashing onto a railroad track. The surviving guard frees Richard so he can treat an injured officer. But in the confusion, the keys fall to the floor near another prisoner. Before anyone can react, a train rushes toward them. Everyone scrambles to escape. Richard struggles to carry the wounded officer away from the wreckage. They barely make it clear as the train slams into the bus, tearing it apart and scattering debris everywhere. In the aftermath, one surviving prisoner unlocks Richard's leg chains. He warns Richard not to follow him and disappears into the night. Moments later, police sirens begin to approach the crash site. Realizing what will happen if he stays, Richard runs into the darkness. For the first time since his arrest, he is no longer in custody, but now he has become a fugitive. At the crash site, the surviving officer gives his report to the local sheriff. According to him, every prisoner died in the accident. Just then, Deputy U.S. Marshal Samuel Gerard and his team arrive. Gerard quickly studies the scene and orders the road sealed until every body is found. The sheriff resists at first, but that changes when one of Gerard's men discovers a loose set of leg cuffs. Realizing that at least one prisoner escaped, Gerard immediately takes control and launches a full manhunt before the night is over. By morning, Richard Kimball has already moved. He steals a worker's clothes and quietly enters a nearby hospital. His stomach wound from the crash needs treatment, and he cannot risk being recognized. While the police search the surrounding roads, Richard carefully stitches his own injury and shaves his beard to change his appearance. The plan almost fails when an officer walks into the hospital. But the man does not recognize him right away. Outside the hospital, he runs into the injured guard who survived the crash. Before the guard can react, Richard quickly explains the situation to the paramedics and helps guide them inside. In the confusion, he slips away again and steals their ambulance. Meanwhile, Gerard learns exactly who Richard Kimball is and why he was being transported to prison. A respected surgeon convicted of murdering his wife. Gerard immediately orders his team to watch Kimball's co-workers, friends, and lawyer, believing he would try to contact someone soon. Not long after, the wounded officer manages to report that Kimball stole the ambulance. Gerard's team spots the vehicle and begins chasing it through the city. The pursuit leads into a long tunnel. When police block both exits, the ambulance stops. But Richard has already disappeared. He finds a drainage tunnel and climbs down into the dark channel below. The rushing sound of water soon catches Gerard's attention. Realizing where Kimball went, he orders his team to split up and search the tunnels carefully. During the chase, Gerard suddenly slips on the wet ground and drops his gun. Richard picks it up and points it at him. For a brief moment, the two men face each other. Richard insists he did not kill his wife. Gerard listens without emotion and simply says he does not care. His job is to bring fugitives back. Richard lowers the gun and runs again. The tunnel ends at a massive dam spillway. With nowhere left to go, Gerard arrives behind him and draws another weapon. This time, Richard has only one choice. Rather than surrender, he leaps over the edge into the roaring water far below. Gerard watches the fall with quiet surprise. He orders the dam closed so search teams can look for the body along the riverbanks. But Richard survives the drop and slowly pulls himself onto the shore. Believing Kimball is dead, Gerard and his team return to their headquarters and leave the rescue crews to continue searching the river. Soon after, they receive news about another escaped prisoner from the crash. By morning, Gerard's team surrounds the man's house. Disguised as workers and homeless men, they move into position before suddenly storming the building. The fugitive reacts fast and grabs one of the officers of the hostage. But Gerard does not hesitate. Even with his own man in danger, he fires and kills the prisoner instantly.
Shut up.
On the other side of the city, Richard Kimball quietly returns to Chicago. He knows the police will never believe him, so the only way to clear his name is to find the real killer himself. Hoping for help, he calls his attorney from a payphone. But the lawyer refuses to assist him and insists that Richard should surrender to the authorities. Realizing there will be no support from the law, Richard ends the call and moves on. He heads toward a tennis club where many of his colleagues usually gather. At a traffic light nearby, he runs into an old friend, Dr. Charles Nichols. Charles is shocked to see him alive and standing in the street. Richard simply asks for some money and leaves as soon as he receives it. At the same time, Gerard and his team analyze the phone call Richard made to his lawyer. They carefully study the background noise recorded in the call. After listening closely, they recognize the announcement of an elevated train line and narrow down the area where Richard might be hiding. Gerard begins to take a deeper interest in the case. Something about it feels unusual. He asks the detectives who handled the original investigation for permission to interview Richard's co-workers from the hospital. Meanwhile, with the money Charles gave him, Richard rents a small room in a quiet suburb. Police across Chicago receive orders to watch for him. Fortunately for Richard, most officers still expect to see a man with a beard, and his shaved face helps him move through the city unnoticed. He returns to the hospital and blends into the background. Moving carefully through the halls, he manages to steal a janitor's identification card. While Richard continues his search, Gerard visits the hospital and questions Charles Nichols. Charles explains that he and Richard went through medical school together and insists that he cannot believe Richard would ever commit murder. But when Gerard presses further, Charles admits that Richard approached him the previous day asking for money. The information may seem small, yet it confirms that Richard is alive and still in the city. Back in his apartment, Richard begins researching prosthetic arms. The memory of the one-armed intruder never leaves his mind. If he can identify the exact type of prosthetic used, he may be able to track down the man who attacked his home. One morning, Richard suddenly wakes when police arrive outside his building. For a moment, he believes they have come for him. But the officers arrest someone else. The tension fades, though Richard realizes it is only a matter of time before they find him. Determined to move faster, he returns to the hospital once again. Disguised as a janitor, he sneaks into the prosthetics department and begins searching through the computer database. By filtering the records for male patients who received a specific type of prosthetic arm before the night of the murder, he slowly narrows the list. What once showed more than 100 names shrinks to only 5 possible suspects. Richard prints the list and slips away quietly. For the first time since his escape, he finally has a direction to follow. As Richard prepares to leave the hospital, chaos suddenly erupts at the entrance. Several injured students arrive along with police officers after an accident. He quietly stands among the staff, trying not to draw attention. In the middle of the confusion, someone asks him to move a young patient to the observation room. While checking the boy's chart, Richard notices something alarming. The child has been misdiagnosed. Without hesitation, he corrects the medical file and sends the boy to the proper treatment room, unknowingly saving his life. Later, a female doctor realizes the patient was moved without her instruction. She confronts Richard and demands to know who changed the file. When he refuses to answer, she suddenly grabs his ID card and runs off to check it. Richard quickly disappears from the hospital before anyone can stop him. The next day, news about the mysterious janitor who saved the boy reaches Gerard. Seeing a one-armed man at the hospital, Gerard suddenly understands. He begins his own search through the database and expands the list of possible suspects. While the police narrow their results to dozens of names, Richard focuses on the 5 he already identified. Soon both sides learn that one of the suspects is scheduled to appear in court for a robbery case. With nothing left to lose, Richard decides to go there himself. He enters the courthouse and even shares an elevator with several officers, staying calm while standing only steps away from them. Inside the jail visitation room, he finally gets a good look at the man, but the moment passes in disappointment. This is not the intruder he fought that night. Richard stands up and quietly leaves the room. At the same time, Gerard and the Chicago detectives arrive at the courthouse, convinced Richard will appear there. As Richard takes the stairs instead of the elevator, Gerard unexpectedly crosses his path. Without thinking, Gerard calls his name. Richard turns his head for a split second, and that is enough. Gerard instantly recognizes him and begins the chase through the stairwell. Richard escapes outside and disappears into the massive crowd celebrating the St. Patrick's Day parade. The sea of people quickly swallows him, and the trail vanishes again. Soon the media surrounds Gerard, demanding answers. They question whether Richard Kimball might actually be innocent after risking everything to return to Chicago. Gerard refuses to make any statement, while local detectives insist he is still a dangerous fugitive. Meanwhile, Richard continues tracking the remaining suspects. Eventually, he reaches the 4th name on his list. Breaking into the man's house, he searches for anything connected to the night his wife died. What he finds finally reveals the truth. The man is named Frederick Sykes, and Richard recognizes him as the one-armed attacker from that night. Even more shocking, the evidence connects Sykes to Richard's colleague, Dr. Alec Lentz. As Richard pieces the information together, the entire plot begins to make sense. Dr. Lentz is involved with a pharmaceutical company called Devlin MacGregor. The company has been developing a new drug, but Richard once discovered that the medicine causes serious liver damage. When he tried to stop the drug from being approved, powerful people had something to lose. And now it becomes clear. Richard Kimball was framed so the truth would never reach the public. After uncovering the connection, Richard calls Gerard directly. His voice remains calm as he tells Gerard that he has finally found a crucial piece of the truth. Then he leaves the phone line open and walks away. Because the call continues, Gerard's team quickly traces the exact location. When they arrive, they collect Richard's fingerprints from the photos and notes he handled inside the house. The evidence helps Gerard understand what Richard was trying to show him. Gerard questions the suspect, Frederick Sykes, but Sykes denies everything. He claims he has never met Richard and insists he was not even in Chicago when the murder happened. Without solid proof, Gerard cannot arrest him. Instead, he orders detectives to place Sykes under constant surveillance and begins looking deeper into Dr. Alec Lentz. Meanwhile, Richard contacts his colleague Dr. Charles Nichols and explains what he has discovered about the one-armed man and the conspiracy behind his wife's murder. But Charles responds with unexpected news. Dr. Lentz supposedly died in an accident the previous summer. Even so, Richard refuses to give up. He returns to the hospital to continue searching for evidence that could clear his name. At the same time, Gerard attends a medical conference where many doctors from the hospital are present. He casually asks Charles about Dr. Lentz. Charles claims he barely knows the man and has never worked closely with him. But something about the answer does not sit right. Back at the hospital archives, Richard uses his old connections to access restricted files. He discovers that Lentz replaced several damaged liver samples with healthy ones to hide the drug's dangerous side effects. Then he notices something even stranger. Some of the approval documents carry Lentz's signature, dated after the day he supposedly died. The realization hits Richard immediately. If Lentz was already dead, someone else must have signed those approvals. And only one person still had the authority to access those records: Charles Nichols. At the same time, Frederick Sykes creates a distraction by reporting a fire near his house. The police watching him rush to investigate, allowing him to slip away unnoticed. Meanwhile, Gerard continues examining the case files and makes another discovery. The approval of the drug's safety came directly from Charles Nichols. Even more revealing, Charles was actually Dr. Lentz's supervisor, meaning he clearly lied earlier. Gerard also finds records showing that Richard's car phone contacted Frederick Sykes on the night of the murder. The pieces begin to connect. Gerard orders his team to bring both Sykes and Charles in for questioning. But before they can act, they learn that Sykes has already escaped surveillance. Realizing the situation is collapsing, Gerard and his team rush toward the medical conference where Charles is speaking, hoping to reach him before he disappears as well. At the same time, Richard boards a train heading toward the same conference. During the trip, a passenger recognizes him from the news and quietly walks away to report the sighting. Suddenly, Sykes appears on the train and draws his gun. When a police officer tries to intervene, he is shot and killed. Richard manages to overpower Sykes, knock him unconscious, and cuff him before leaving the train. But to the arriving officers, the scene looks different. They believe Richard killed the officer and immediately issue orders to shoot him on sight.
Officer down.
What'd he do, shoot a cop?
Ignoring the danger, Richard presses forward and reaches the hotel where the conference is being held. In front of the crowd, he confronts Charles Nichols and exposes everything: the murder of Dr. Lentz, the hidden drug side effects, and the plan to protect Devlin MacGregor's profits. Police soon surround the building. Gerard and his marshals arrive as well, pushing their way inside even while local officers try to hold them back. The truth is finally about to surface. Charles Nichols continues pretending to be innocent and invites Richard into a quiet hotel room, acting as if he wants to help. But the moment Richard steps inside, Charles suddenly attacks from behind. The truth is no longer hidden. The two men begin a desperate fight that carries them through the hotel and onto the rooftop. When they finally burst outside, a Chicago police helicopter spots them and opens fire at Richard. The bullets strike around him, but none of them hit. Just then, Gerard arrives on the roof and orders the shooting to stop. The fight between Richard and Nichols continues. During the struggle, both men fall through the top of an elevator. Nichols recovers first and tries to escape. Moments later, Richard pulls himself up and continues after him. At the same time, Gerard and his team reach the 5th floor and clear the hotel staff out of the area. Gerard calls out to Richard, warning him that the police believe he killed an officer on the train. If he does not surrender, they will shoot him immediately. But Gerard also reveals something important. After investigating the case himself, he now understands what really happened. Nichols had secretly borrowed Richard's car the night of the murder. From inside the car, he obtained the house keys and used them to let Frederick Sykes into Richard's home without any forced entry. Nichols even made the phone call to Sykes using Richard's car phone, carefully setting up the entire crime. Before Gerard can finish, Nichols suddenly strikes again. Using a hanging hospital gurney, he knocks one of Gerard's men unconscious and grabs the officer's gun. He raises the weapon toward Gerard. But before he can fire, Richard lunges forward and knocks Nichols to the ground. Gerard survives, and the fight finally ends. Soon after, both Nichols and Frederick Sykes are taken into custody. The truth behind the murder is finally exposed. Gerard then escorts Richard out of the hotel in handcuffs. Outside, they place him in the back of a police car. But once the doors close, Gerard quietly removes the cuffs and hands Richard a small bag of ice for his injuries. With a faint smile, Gerard tells him to keep that small favor a secret. The car drives away into the night, this time not carrying a fugitive, but a man finally on his way to being cleared of the crime he never committed.